Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of WLBT's Ask the Experts. I am your host, Tyler Prince, and with me again today is Lee Garland with the Garland Group and eXp Realty. We will be answering your questions that you've submitted to the Ask the Experts page at wlbt.com/Ask the Experts. And as always, we ask for you to ask questions on Facebook as we go, and we'll try to answer them as we go along. Lee, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. I'm glad, and Tyler, it's been a while since we've been able to do a show together, so I'm excited about you being our host today. It's good seeing you again.
You too. Me too. Yeah, unfortunately, Martina wasn't able to be here, but I'll be filling in. All right, so let's jump right into it. We've got some really good questions today, and we got a lot to cover. So number one, I'm adding an in-ground pool. Will this add any value to my house? And does it matter if it's gunite or liner?
In-ground pools. For years and years, a lot of times people have said pools do not add value to a home, and for the most and if you're selling your home and the buyer has no interest in the pool, I've had people tell me they don't want to look at properties that have pools. So if you do knock out a certain percentage of the buying public when you put a pool on the property. However, my personal house, I have a pool. I bought it with a pool, and I've chosen to keep that pool and keep it up for resale values because I do believe it adds value to the property, even though not all buyers want it. My pool has a vinyl liner, and the Gunite pool, which is more of a concrete plaster style pool, is more expensive to install. It's not really any more expensive to maintain, but that Gunite pool is supposedly a higher end pool, but as far as value goes, when it goes to sell, a pool is going to be a pool in most cases. Today I hear more people ask, is it saltwater or chlorine based pools? And saltwater trumps the chlorine any day of the week. So if I was looking to put a pool in, I would be definitely looking at a saltwater pool. Gunite versus vinyl, personal choice. So it's not going to really add that much difference in value. And I will tell you this: you can spend $70,000 on a nice pool, and it's probably only going to add it's going to add somewhere between 5 and 15,000 in value. So you will not get your dollar for dollar money back out of it.
Yeah, is that something that you kind of warn people about when they're looking for houses with pools? They may be able to afford the mortgage, but the upkeep on the pool might, play some role. Is that whenever they're looking something that you kind of forewarn about?
So it is, and it's much better to buy a house with a pool than to buy a house and put a pool in. But the upkeep on a pool, if it's a saltwater, it's less chemical cost and upkeep on a saltwater style pool. Other things to look at is when you do buy a pool, if it's a vinyl liner, the age of the liner. A new liner in a 18 by 30 pool is going to run you anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000. Those liners generally last 3 to 5 years. And are there a lot of trees around the pool? If there's a lot of trees and you've got constant cleaning going on, the sap off the trees will cause the chemicals to be off balance. So you're looking, cost of owning a pool, time you add the utilities, electricity to run the pool pump, the chemicals and all, you're going to be looking at anywhere from $50 to $150 a month upkeep for that pool on average.
Wow, definitely something to take into consideration. Okay, question number 2. When looking at older homes, when are major appliances like air units, heating units, the water heater too old and a buyer needs to consider having it replaced prior to purchasing that home?
So I'm sure everyone's heard the old saying, they don't make them like they used to.
Yeah.
And you see that with appliances today, heating and cooling units and stuff today. I can go into a 1960s or 70s something house, and it'll have an air unit in there that's 50 years old and still running. However, most of your home inspectors today will tell you the life expectancy of a central heating and cooling unit is somewhere between 10 and 15 years now. Same with water heaters and everything else, and the other components of a house. Attic, the turbo attic fans, the things that the fans, the vents that take the hot air out of the attic, most of those only last about 2 years. So the appraisers, when they look at a property and they're looking at, it's got a dishwasher and it's got central air and heat, they're looking at, is it functioning today? One that's functioning is functioning. They don't give any extra value just because it's newer. So, but I always encourage a home warranty, especially if the appliances are 7, 8, 9 years old. I would encourage a home warranty for that. You need to budget. If they're in excess of 10 years old, you need to budget for their replacement within the next 5 years. But that most home inspectors are saying 10 to 15 years, 10 to 12 years is life expectancy. That doesn't mean they're going to go out in 12 years. They could last just like, they could last 50 years. Who knows? I literally have seen houses with units that are over 50 years old running still today.
Well, so the second part to the question, can I ask the seller to replace any of those appliances if it's needed?
So the definition of needed is the key component of the question. If the appliance is working as it should, then you should have asked for that you should have asked for that in the offer stage, not after you've contracted on it. Because the seller promised to sell you a property in its current condition. And then if anything was discovered that was not disclosed, you could ask for that, or you would have the ability to cancel based upon that. According to state statute, any defect that was not disclosed or discovered after the fact, if it's a latent defect, there's a 3-day right of rescission in real estate transactions when a real estate agent's involved. So if it's just old and you think, hey, it's at its life expectancy, but it's working, you really don't have a leg to stand on to ask them to replace it unless you cover that before the offer is accepted.
Okay. All right. So yeah, check your P's and Q's and make sure everything is working appropriately before you get too far along. Is that?
Yep.
Okay. Question number 3. Gluckstadt was just incorporated to be its own city. Will my home value increase? And if so, by how much?
So technically, it should increase. The home value should increase. As a city, you have more benefits in a city. You typically have better fire ratings, and so therefore you have lower insurance costs. You have your own police force and municipality items there. So because of all of those things come into place, home values should increase. To what level they increase is kind of an unknown based upon what, are those departments run appropriately, and is the city going to, are they going to build parks? Is there going to be things for the community to do in the city and the support for that? It should increase, but that is, there are some cities that do not do very much. Municipalities do not do very much for the city, and that can be a detriment as well.
Right. Okay. Question number 4, should I consider sanding and restaining my hardwood floors prior to listing?
I think that anything that you can do to the property to make it smell fresh or new and look new is a benefit. That's one of the reasons, though, you want a realtor to come out and take a look at the house and give you advice, because my rule of thumb is I don't want you to spend $1 on rehabbing or replacing something if you're not going to get more than that dollar back.
Right.
So, but sanding the floors and refinishing them, as long as it's with a modern finish, should be a big win for you and increase the sellability of the property. So and the fact that the question is asked means that it's probably scratched up and has been worn and would warrant doing such.
Yeah. If you think it needs it, it probably needs it,
It
right?
probably does.
All right. Number 5, will hiring a professional landscaper to add aesthetic appeal increase or add more value to my house prior to listing?
So curb appeal is everything. And that's half the battle. If somebody drives up to your house and says, "Oh, wow," that's a good sign.
Yeah.
And because you've just set the stage for them to, you just set the stage and you gave a good feeling. Buying houses, buying cars, buying anything is still an emotional decision for the most part. So I would not go over the top on professional landscaping, because there are some buyers that would look at that professional landscape and say, "I don't want to fool with keeping all of that up. I
Yeah.
just want to cut my grass and go." So I would be cautious in going over the top, and I would get the advice of a realtor that looks at the property as it is today and your end game plan of what you want to do, because you can overdo it.
Okay. Um, I've been driving around looking at homes and have noticed a lot of cracks in the driveways. Is this a concern for foundation issues?
I'm not an engineer, but keep in mind that the driveway is not the same slab or concrete as the actual where the house sits. That is poured separately, and it does not have the same reinforcements as the slab of a home. Now, one of the thought, and most all driveways and carports or garage floors, all concrete cures, and so there's going to be some minor cracks in all types of concrete. The driveway, though, is not the same makeup of the actual slab of the house. So a crack in the driveway could be that a heavy truck drove across it. That when they backed up the dump truck or the tractor, they may have broken it that way. Cracks in the driveway typically are a result of water intrusions, a crack in it, and then the water intrusion, just like concrete erosion is a bit of a stretch, but water and wind will cause surfaces to erode. And once you get water in there, that concrete could get bigger, especially that crack could get bigger, especially if it freezes.
Yeah.
So I would not say a house has foundation issues just because the driveway is cracked.
Okay, if you were to inspect a house and you're looking for foundation issues, what are some things that you should keep an eye out for if that's something you're concerned about?
Yeah. So as a member of the public, and I am speaking not as a home inspector or structural engineer, but things that I look for when I walk into a house, I'm looking for cracks, especially jagged cracks above windows and doorways.
Mhm.
I'm looking for windows that will not open. I'm looking for doors that are hard to open or automatically close without any type of assistance.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of times you can feel the unlevelness of the floor. I've known people to take golf balls or Coca-Cola or pop soda cans and see if they would roll across the floor. But looking for cracks in the walls and around the windows and doors and such like that. Now, some people get hung up on, "Oh my gosh, there's a straight crack in the seam of the ceiling," or
Mhm.
especially if it's a tray ceiling or a vaulted ceiling. They see this long straight line and they think, "Oh, that's foundation." The truth is that's a taped seam where the ceiling was vaulted, and it has a 2x6 or 2x8 that is there, and the sheetrock comes up, and that's just a joint. It's not necessarily a foundation issue. So if it's a straight line, it's probably not. Again,
Yeah.
I'm not an engineer.
Right.
Probably not something that's an issue. And now if it's jagged, that means there's been some pressure put on it, which creates something. Also look at the brick veneer on the outside to see if there's cracks in that. But don't, if there's any question, get an engineer to look at it.
Okay. Yeah. Just something to keep in mind. All right. Number 7. What are the pros and cons of conventional foundation homes versus slab?
You know, a conventional versus slab, if it's raised, conventional is raised. If you have to do work on that, you have easier access to it. And if you have to do work on a slab, if a pipe bursts under a slab, you have to jackhammer that concrete out to get to that pipe.
Oh.
If so, a pro to a conventional is it's easier access. A negative to a conventional is it could hold water up under it or moisture under it. Also, under a conventional foundation, especially in colder climates, but they're less energy efficient because of the draft that goes under that particular property.
Right.
So if you stay cold all the time, if you're generally colder than the other people around you, and you lived in a raised slab conventional foundation property, you might think that it's a little more drafty because it is in that property.
Oh.
So conventional foundations are cheaper to repair for the most part if something goes wrong. However, a slab foundation actually has a cheaper insurance rating
Oh.
and is less drafty.
That's good to know. Does replacing a roof allow the seller to ask more for their house?
So it makes the house more sellable.
Mhm.
But as long as the roof is not at its life expectancy, it does not add any additional value.
Okay. How difficult is it to purchase a second home for a vacation, like down at the coast, but also will use it to rent out when not using it for myself?
So it's a great opportunity for me to put a plug in here. I actually own a home on the coast, and I operate on the coast as well as in Jackson and Hattiesburg. So if you're looking at buying something on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, I can help you with that. So it's not any more difficult to buy a second home on the coast, provided you're credit worthy and or you've got the cash to do so. To rent it out, you can VRBO it, or you can hire a management company to manage it. I know a lot of properties on the coast. You know, I know I've got friends that have their properties rented out every day of the month for the most part of the year under temporary short-term rentals. Bay St. Louis, Biloxi, Ocean Springs, those areas are hot markets right now for that type of property. So it's not a difficult task. One of the things you do need to be careful of, though, if you're going to rent it on a short-term rate like VRBO, you need to check with that municipality if VRBOs are allowed. Currently, there's nowhere on the coast that does not allow VRBOs as far as a municipality, but there are neighborhoods that do not allow it.
Okay. And since you plugged, I'll go ahead and say leewillbuyit.com if you are looking in any of those areas. Also, you can reach them at 601-983-1130. I just saw a comment come in on the Facebook page from Kelly Boyd, our old host for Ask the Experts. Speaking of the coast, she moved down there. She says, "Hello, Lee. She misses interviewing you." And she said hey to me as well.
We'll
Uh,
have to. She'll have to buy me dinner at Trapini's in Bay St. Louis and get the shrimp ecstasy. That's my favorite. Actually, I probably owe it to Kelly because I know I drove her crazy as a guest on her show. So
well, you hear that, Kelly. You're going to be buying dinner soon. Let's keep going. Question number 10. I remodeled my home to increase I'm remodeling my home to make more use of the space. In doing so, I removed the gas fireplace section that was built mainly for looks. Will this hurt the home value when selling my home?
So if there is no fireplace at all, it
Mhm.
does have a negative impact on the value of the home. As I know we're in the South and we don't have harsh winters, but most buyers expect a property to have a fireplace, whether it's gas or wood or whether it's just for looks. Most buyers they do expect a fireplace to be in a property, so it does affect the sellability and does have a minor effect on the appraised value.
Okay. Is a buyer allowed to ask why the homeowner is selling?
Sure. The buyer can ask, the homeowner does not have to answer. And the truth of the matter is, it really doesn't matter why the seller is selling. I get this question all the time. Where's the seller moving to? Why are they selling? And I think sometimes the question comes from, I want to know if they are selling because there's something wrong with the home. And if there's something wrong that they know is wrong with the home, then they have to disclose it, legally have to disclose it. But if they're selling because they're downsizing or upsizing or moving out of state, and or because, even if the home is paid for, ultimately it doesn't have a great impact on your ability to negotiate. So if you're asking thinking it's going to give you a better ability to negotiate or that the seller will take less, that's not really the case. Now, if the seller is desperate and about to face foreclosure or bankruptcy, that that certainly would tell you enough to where if you can stand firm on your offer. But don't think that that answer is going to have a significant impact on what the seller takes. And if a house is paid for, a lot of people think, oh, a house is paid for, the seller's going to take less. What I've found is when a house is paid for, the seller stands a lot firmer on their price than somebody that owes a mortgage on their property.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And this is the last question. So if y'all have any for Facebook, go ahead and get them in. Um, do new construction homes have separate contracts for purchase agreements and time limitations?
So there is not a standard contract in Mississippi. However, most builders have a preferred contract that they use individually, and most new construction contracts do have timelines and specifications of what goes in that property, allowances for lighting, painting, flooring, plumbing, stuff like that. There are allowances in. Be very careful on buying a new construction home today that is not finished, because the price that you start at today, builders are very hesitant to quote final prices because the building materials are fluctuating so much. The price that you are quoted today may not be the price it finishes at 90 days from now. So there's not a standard contract, but yes, most of those have timelines and allowances put in.
Okay. We did have one question come in through Facebook. I may pronounce this wrong, so forgive me, but Vara Chapata said buying 10 old houses at low rates and give it on rent or buy a new. I'm trying to say it's worded weird. Higher price and rent it. Buying 10 old houses at low rates and give it on rent or buy a new house for a higher price and rent it. Which one is better?
Okay, so it's an investor question. Is it
Okay.
better to buy 10 old houses? Is it better to take, let's just say you have $500,000. Is it better to buy 10 old houses with that $500,000, or better to buy one or two houses with that $500,000? Uh, I like diversification.
Right.
And if you're going to be an investor and going into the rental market, owning one or two properties is the biggest mistake most investors make. They think I'm going to own me 3 or 4 rentals, 5 rentals. Well, you're not diversified enough. And if one of those 2 rentals or 3 rentals has an air conditioner go out, that air conditioner just cost you $5,000. And the rent that you get off of those couple of properties will take years to recuperate that repair. Whereas if you had 10 properties that were cash flowing and you had a vacancy or a repair, those 10 properties would offset quicker the expense of the repair. I like having more. I like making more littles than one lot. And if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got 2 more questions from Facebook that we'll get, and before we run out of time, Jasmine Chapman says, if a home has had foundation repaired within the last 2 years, would you buy it? If home says everything that should be done was, if homeowner says everything that should be done was, have a transferable warranty. Oh, well, that may not have been a question.
So if a home has a transferable warranty and has had foundation repair in the last 2 years, would I buy it?
I think that was the question.
Everything has been completed. It depends on the extent of it's a personal choice. The house that I live in now, I bought knowing it had some foundation movement. So it depends on what you can stand. My belief, and I'm not an expert on this, I'm not an engineer. My belief, if a property is moved multiple times, that's probably a good sign it's going to move again.
Yeah.
If it's moved once and they repaired it and it's stuck, I have a higher comfort level personally. So it's a personal decision. Lifetime transferable warranty is only on the repaired area of the house. So if another area of the house moves, you're on your own.
Yeah. Okay, and Debbie Miller asked, is there any recourse if you find out there are foundation problems years after your purchase with the realtor or the inspector?
If they knew about it, or there's statute of limitations come into, and I'm not an attorney, but there's a statute of limitations, typically about 3 years in Mississippi. If fraud was committed, they knew about it and they didn't disclose it, I would think that you would have some recourse. You would need to talk to an attorney about that. But if knowing about it and not knowing about it, it's hard to prove unless there's documentation or witnesses of some sort. Just because it moved and you think they knew about it doesn't mean they did. And you need to have some proof there, and it's hard to prove.
Okay. All right. Well, that's going to be all of our questions for today. If we missed any, we'll be sure to answer them after the live. Thank you all for joining us. Lee, thank you so much. If y'all have any more questions or want to get in contact with Lee, you can call him at 601-983-1130 or visit him at leewillbuyit.com. The next set of questions will be, I don't know which date you're coming back.
I don't either.
But you can send your questions to the Ask the Experts page at wobt.com/Ask the Experts. And as always, thanks for joining us.
Have a great day.
You too.